Brother Sarek,
Brother West.
what a pleasure to see your lovely face.
My brother, it's always great to see you. I have a face for radio only, so
Well, then turn your darn video off.
I think we'll do that so I don't scare people.
Yeah, me too. I'll do the same.
Yes, thank you, everybody. We're about to start, so thank you. Keep your videos off for now.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. And thank you for joining us online. I now convene the meeting of the Committee of the Whole. This is a semi-official meeting that is required by our standing rules. No actions or votes will be taken. Rather, it's an opportunity for us to discuss issues and recommendations that will come before the National Board. My EA will now call the official roll.
Thank you, sir. National Commodore Gus Formato.
I'm present.
Vice National Commodore Mary Kirkwood.
Present.
Immediate Past National Commodore Alex Molesky.
Present.
Chief Director of the Auxiliary Captain Troy Glendye.
Present.
Deputy National Commodore Atlantic Area East and Mission Support Alan Fred.
Present.
Deputy National Commodore Atlantic Area West and Operations Patrick Ferry.
Present.
Deputy National Commodore Pacific Area and Recreational Boating Safety Tiny Singler.
Present.
Deputy National Commodore Information Technology and Planning Linda Merriman.
Present.
District Commodore First Northern John Hume.
Present.
District Commodore First Southern Michael West.
Present.
District Commodore 5th Northern Kurt Sarek.
Present.
District Commodore 5th Southern John Krogman.
Present.
District Commodore 7th District John Holmes.
Present.
District Commodore 8th Coastal Region Pete Scamata.
Present.
District Commodore 8 Eastern Chris Whitaker. District Commodore 8 Western Rivers Brock Stevens. District Chief of Staff 9 Central Mark Villano. If you are present, if you can unmute yourself and say present. District Commodore 9 Eastern Richard Evans.
Present.
District Commodore 9 Western Sonny Thatch.
Present.
District Commodore 11 Northern Curtis Hahn.
Present.
District Commodore 11 Southern Michael Borzarth.
Present.
District Commodore 13th District Danny Kinley.
Here.
District Commodore 14th District Michael Carrig.
Present.
District Commodore 17th District Marion Parrish.
Present.
And President National Association of Commodores Robert Lauer.
That's Robert Schaefer,
Oh,
present.
my apologies. And you're present. Thank you.
During this session, there will be comments from the Chief Director of the Auxiliary, the Vice National Commodore. There will also be reports from the Deputy National Commodores and the President of the National Association of Commodores. We will now hear these reports of the National Executive Committee.
Chief Director Captain Troy Glendye.
All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm sorry we couldn't not be in person, but I'm glad we have the opportunity to do this here virtually. So I've got 5 things I'd like to discuss today. The first being is our BSX policy letters, SOPs. all axes since the last time we've had our committee of the whole meeting. So since NACON in August 2024, 4 BSX policy letters have been released. BSX policy letter 2302 highlights auxiliary uniform and appearance policy changes. BSX policy letter 2303 provides updates to auxiliary damage claims, procedures, and requirements. And BSX policy letter 1901 Bravo provides updated risk management training requirements for the Coast Guard Auxiliary. And then finally, the fourth one is the BSX policy letter 2401, which was just recently released in February of 2024 and defines the updated waiver requirements for boat crew night certifications and operations. Moving on to our SOPs, we've had one SOP since NACON 2024, SOP 013 Alpha, which created the Auxiliary Travel Arranger Program, a new position that auxiliaries can staff in order to assist DIROC's offices with the processing of auxiliary travel orders. The revised Auxiliary Coast Guard Recruiting Support SOP 006 is on the verge of promulgation and will replace the original 2019 version. The Auxiliary Financial Control Workgroup has also updated the original 2022 version of the Auxiliary Financial Control SOP. Its 008B revision is undergoing final review by our General Law Office and should be promulgated by the end of March. Now moving on to our ALOXs, we've had a total of 18 since NACON. They have addressed a wide range of topics, including qualification credits for newly discharged, retired Coast Guard members, posting of the fiscal year 24 Auxiliary Sea School calendar, AUX 2 patrol order guidance, and much more. The total number of ALOXs promulgated in 2023 was 43 total. And as I mentioned before, all of these policy letters, SOPs, and ALOXs are all available on the Chief DIROC's website. Moving on to our second item I'd like to talk about is the National Board Recommendations recap. So of course, in August, the Chief DIROC's issued final actions on the 3 National Board recommendations that were addressed at NACON 2024. Complete verbiage on all 3 can be found in ALOX 031-23. But I'm just going to highlight a couple of the key points. So the first one was the revised eligibility for the Annual Service Performance Award, M-Device. Approved the inclusion of 4 navigation system activity codes to count towards earning this Annual Service Performance Award so that auxiliaries to perform ATON, PATON, and bridge related activities get credit toward this award. The second one is created the Auxiliary Leadership Development Ribbon. Approved creation of this new ribbon to recognize completion of the auxiliary leadership training levels. Ribbon availability is expected in the next year. And the third one is the created Auxiliary Legal Officers Insignia. Its approved creation of this insignia for district and national auxiliary legal offices recognizes for the Coast Guard legal officers. Insignia availabilities is expected in the next year. The third thing I would like to discuss is the transition from ALAC cards to NEATS tokens. On March 21st, DoD will change how it issues logical access cards to volunteers, which of course includes auxiliaries. Instead of being issued ALACs, auxiliaries will be issued NEATS tokens. These tokens are functionally the same as ALACs, but have some physical appearance differences. Auxiliaries who already have ALACs will continue using them until they expire. After that, they'll have to get a NEATS token. A key procedural change to getting NEATS tokens will require auxiliaries to go to a NEATS issuing site to pick up their cards rather than going to a rapid site. There are more NEATS issuing sites than rapid sites, So this should be a favorable change to how conveniently auxiliaries will be able to pick up NEATS tokens when they are ready. We are continuing to work closely with CG Cyber and the Coast Guard Security Management Office, which is known as DCMS 34, to revise the procedures for NEATS token processing and to keep the process as easy and convenient as possible for auxiliaries and their trusted agents in the DIROC's offices. My fourth thing I would like to discuss here is the Auxiliary Integration Award. Last year, as many of you know, the Commandant approved the creation of the Auxiliary Integration Award, comprised of the Commodore Viggo C. Bertelsen Jr. and Vice Admiral John P. Curry Award, and the District Director of the Year Award. Respective inaugural award winners for 2022 were the Coast Guard Academy, Sector Long Island Sound, the Research and Development Center, and Commander Christina Sullivan of D1 Northern Region. All Coast 499-23 was a solicitation message for 2023 nominees, and the deadline for this year's nomination was March 1st. However, not enough nomination packages have been received yet, so we will issue an all Coast next week to extend the deadline and remind Coast Guard units for the call of this nominations. A selection of Coast Guard workforce representatives will ultimately select the 2023 awardees. But please, I need your help and to encourage our active duty peers to submit nominations through their active duty chain. The fifth one is our Auxiliary Forms Privacy Review Project. BSX continues to work closely with CG 68, which is the Coast Guard's privacy office, and the Auxiliary User Support and Service Directorate to complete a comprehensive review of auxiliary forms. These forms, located on the auxiliary website and used by many in the auxiliary for numerous reasons, are still able to be used throughout this review process and will be updated as each review is complete. This process is ongoing, as so far 5 forms have made it completely through the Coast Guard and Department of Homeland Security's approval process and have approved Privacy Act Statement Privacy Threshold Analysis. In closing, I'm very sorry that we could not do this in person, as this is my last NTRAIN before retirement. I wanted to personally thank everyone for all of your support while I've been the Chief Director here for the Auxiliary. And thank you for all that you have done for our Coast Guard and our nation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Captain. We'll now hear from VNACO, Mary Kirkwood.
Good afternoon or good morning to those of us in the PAC area. You heard earlier today at OPCOM from the program areas that report directly to the VNACO position. Commodore Cream, our Chief Counsel, Tom Banford from Diversity and Inclusion, Donna Miller from Finance, and Commodore Schaefer for Safety. So I won't re-report on the great work that they're doing to keep us safely floating, but say thank you for your work, dedication, and expertise in your fields. I do want to report on 2 national task forces that were formed out of discussion from last year's NTRAIN. The onboarding task force was created initially to streamline the onboarding of active duty Coast Guard into the auxiliary. This was a request of the Commandant, Admiral Fagan. However, the conversation in the task force quickly turned to how we should be looking past streamlining just the onboarding of active duty and looking at how we can streamline the onboarding of all of our prospective members. We reviewed the requirements for membership of special interest groups like clergy, culinary, medical, cyber, and interpreters, and considered if their needs should warrant different requirements or different onboarding. We also reviewed the process for background checks, core training, and the BC2 course. We discussed changes to the new member application, the future membership allowance of permanent resident aliens, the process for obtaining ALAC cards, and whether our applicants should need to complete the new member exam or if the BCQ2 course would suffice to provide new members with the information they need to be educated, productive members of our organization. Also, do all new members need a boating course? So very lively discussions in this group, several differences of opinions and different thoughts from people. As a result of this task force, you'll hear of 2 recommendations before the National Board tomorrow. One recommendation is to eliminate the new member exam upon application to the auxiliary, but still require new members to complete the BC2 course like they do now. The other recommendation is to eliminate the BC2 course and the Administrative Procedures course as courses determining eligibility to run for elected office. Again, you'll hear more about that later today, and then we'll vote tomorrow. Also from the onboarding task force, the T Directorate, which is member training, revised the BCQ2 course by developing slides with voiceover that will take approximately 4 to 4.5 hours to complete. It can now be instructor-led and offered as a workshop. This is yet another option for our members in AP status to complete the course and lends itself well to be given at a DTRAIN. The H Directorate, Human Resources, revised the new member Passport to Success and Membership Involvement Plans. These documents better support new members' involvement in activities at the flotilla level and encourage their participation. Our IT group directorates created a new member welcome aboard letter that gets generated from Aux Data 2 and they offer an introductory course in Aux Data 2 to new members a few months after they're on board, to make sure that they understand how to get their hours in and monitor what they're doing. In addition, BSX reviewed and determined which qualifications that active duty can bring with them when they join the auxiliary. This was a great task force, great collaboration from several directorates, including the T, the Training Directorate, the Human Resource Directorates, the IT Directorates, BSX, the DNACOs, and our National Commodore. So thank you for a job well done. That is just about completed, though we still have a little bit of follow-up work to do after this weekend. The second task force that was created after NTRAIN last year was the Help Wanted Task Force. This task force, or the task of this group, was to develop a streamlined method for our active duty to request help from the auxiliary. Many districts have some sort of process already to match members to job requests, but we looked specifically at the work done in districts 11 North, 11 South, and 5 North, who seem to have process a little bit beyond some of the other districts. While their processes were different, they all showed success in meeting some or most of the requests of the active duty. As our task force evolved, we brought in the different groups with particular expertise we needed. The leadership of District 11 North, 11 South, and 5 North, where they were already running effective programs, the H Directorate, Human Resources, our IT Directorates, and BSX. Because our long-term goal was an automated system that would capitalize on and work with the information in Aux Data 2, protecting our members' PHI was very important. We met with Salesforce, the developers of Aux Data 2. They gave us 2 demonstrations on some of the different things that Salesforce, the Aux Data 2 could do for us. Work is still very much happening in this task force, and as you can imagine, there are many, many, many moving parts to this program. Our plan is to eventually run the program like a job board in every district, so it would be consistent in every district. And it's not just looking at how we can capture job requests from active duty, but it could also be used, for example, if one district or one flotilla is doing a public affairs event and doesn't have enough members, they could use this system to request perhaps members from other divisions around them or flotillas. We're currently working on how to capture job requests electronically, eventually from every sector, small boat station, air station, cutter, etc. We're discussing how to effectively vet members to match the best member for the job. So there's definitely more work to come from this task force, and I definitely want to thank the members of this group for their commitment to making this project work. Our IT people are continuing to support us, and will be doing some of the work as we work towards integrating into Aux Data 2. Thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you, Commodore Cookwood. We will now hear from DNACO Atlantic East and Mission Support, Alan Fred.
Thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of the 11,716 Atlantic East members, I am pleased to share with you highlights that have been provided to me by our district commodores to share with you. Before I share these highlights, I'm pleased to report that 11,716 member number includes a net increase of 68 members so far in the first basically 2 months of 2024. Again, a net increase of 68. We are clearly off to a good start in Land East with our recruiting efforts. From District 1 North, they asked me to share with you that they have stood up an auxiliary unit coordinator program. The program has skilled and experienced auxiliaries assigned to each active duty unit, and these members are charged with communicating with the unit to determine the unit's needs for auxiliary assistance, and then to work with members to fill these needs. District 1 North also has experienced a complete turnover in their bridge, and they have a new D1 North die rocks, and they anticipate a very, very good year within the district. They are also pleased that they will have a DTRAIN in June. This is their first in-person DTRAIN in their district in over 4 years. And we all know, of course, the obvious benefits of having in-person events such as DTRAINs. From 1 South, they have completed their staff officer college. They held it at SUNY Maritime. They had over 200 members in attendance. The virtual portion was shared with 1 North. Like 1 North, they do have a DTRAIN scheduled. It is in 2 weeks. It will be in Mystic, Connecticut. They currently have over 325 members scheduled for classes that will be offered during their DTRAIN. They anticipate, when it's all said and done, to have over 400 members in attendance at their DTRAIN. They have a special guest scheduled. That guest is Sammy Davis, who is a Vietnam War Medal of Honor recipient. Commodore Kirkwood will be attending, and they have a full schedule of events, including an Aux Lambs class, which will be taught by Martin Goodwin, who's the Chief of Staff from D7. They are also planning a Leadership Development Academy, going back to the Coast Guard Academy in January of 25 for 3 training days. They have a new member training crew who have had experience with Staff Officer College and DTRAIN, and look forward to a robust event in January of 2025. District 5 North, as Commodore Kirkwood alluded to, they are continuing with their Help Wanted One Team program, where they are placing their members as needed by active duty, culinary assistance, health service, administrative work, watchstanders, and so forth. Commodore Sarek has briefed his chain of leadership on fouled anchor, and is implementing a process and doubling down on education to the members at all levels within Fifth Northern. He is also reporting that they are working hard to break down perception barriers, what the auxiliary is authorized to do, trying to solve some of the continuing resolution hangovers, and collaborating with the force alignment needs of the Coast Guard. He is also indicating that they are working diligently to bridge the communication gap and our local policies, and simply put, they want the policies, manuals, and so forth to have language that is similar to or equal to the active duty Coast Guard language. Fifth Southern has been very active in the culinary assistance support of the active duty. Likewise, interpreter assistance has been ongoing, including an auxiliarist who was called upon by the Coast Guard to serve as an interpreter at a hearing involving a fire on an Italian vessel. The AUP program in Fifth Southern has been very, very active. The Virginia Military Institute and Virginia Tech are two excellent sources for the Coast Guard's direct commissioning program. We reported last year the number of direct commissions from those two institutions, and those numbers continue to grow. So again, a very robust program for commissioning. Fifth Southern also has, and I'm getting short of time here, a very, very excellent Sea Scout initiative ongoing in the DC area. It is the largest Sea Scout ship with 50 youth and 22 adult members. And that ship actually has two members who have been offered appointments to the Coast Guard Academy. They have one on the wait list at the Coast Guard Academy, and a number of members of that ship who are in the process of working with the recruiting office there in the DC area to enlist in the Coast Guard. District 7 is reporting, again, this is a very large district, over 3,900 members. Lots of really good work so far this year. They've had over 1,500 operational support hours, 460 underway hours, 111 airborne hours, 600 PE graduates, 4,000 VE exams, and 4,200 culinary assistant support hours to the Coast Guard. A lot of really, really good work there in D7. They've also had two SAR situations that they were involved in. One wherein a boater was stranded for 3 days on an island, small island there in the Caribbean, that our Aux folks were able to assist with. And they also assisted with a vessel on fire where they were able to rescue 3 boaters and a dog that was on board. So again, the SAR missions there in D7 very, very, very much in the forefront. They held a paddle training event on the west coast of Florida. A number of D7 members became qualified, certified in these qualifications. And I'm about out of time, but I do want to just quickly say a huge thank you to the ForceCom staff. You heard their reports this morning. A lot of good work there. A lot of very good work there, and bravo Zulu to ForceCom staff for the job that they are doing very, very well. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Commodore Fred. Up next is DCO Atlantic West and Operations, Patrick Ferry.
Thank you, Kelly, and good afternoon, everyone. It's always a privilege for me to represent the 4,000 plus auxiliaries in the Atlantic West and the members all around the country that staff our response, prevention, and marine safety, international affairs, and emergency management directorates. So I want to take a few minutes, just like Alan did, and report to you some of the highlights and challenges of the that are being experienced in Atlantic West. So let's start by going from east to west. The 9th Eastern region, Commodore Rich Evans and his Chief of Staff Steve Botsford are happy to report that they're making progress and working with the active duty in preparation for a big event that's going to occur on April 8th that many of us in the country are going to be able to experience, and that's a solar eclipse. April 8th is not the most pleasant time to be on the water up in the Northeast, so there's some concern there, and Rich and his crews are going to be out trying to keep everybody as safe as possible. Also, the sector stepped up its efforts in the area of aids to navigation last year. They were asked by sector to inspect private aids. They're happy to report they inspected over 300, and they're hoping to increase that amount going into 2024. And more importantly, 2 members joined the auxiliary in the 9th Eastern last year who joined specifically to promote the paddlecraft program. And at their own expense, they went to the ACA courses and became instructor certified, and now are instructors and also paddlecraft examiners. And their intent is to attend as many paddlecraft events as they can during the boating season, in an effort to not only spread our boating safety message, but to recruit people into the auxiliary. Some of the challenges they feel they're facing is that some of their member inquiries coming to AMS are hitting a dead end. So they've stood up a team of people within the district that can reply to those and not put all that burden on an individual flotilla or division. And that seems to be working better than what was going on before. They are also experiencing some members with inter-district transfers, and would kind of like to see the paperwork cut down to maybe just the 7056 form, which is the request for transfer. And they would like to see the ability for electronic signatures to be used on all that documentation in an effort to speed it up. In the 9th Central, Commodore Patty Matrosky and Commodore Mark Villeneuve, who's the Chief of Staff, are happy to see the training quotas for sea schools at the level they are, because they plan on hosting some sea schools at their upcoming conference. They report that uniform inspections are being accepted very well, and as a result, a lot of people who are finding out that they had expired ID cards, so that's getting cleaned up as well. And Commodore Matrosky also reports that the new surface operation guidelines and manuals are being accepted very well and welcomed, and they're looking forward to moving forward with those next year. Some of the challenges they do see is the budget uncertainty with federal budget is kind of causing some concerns. They would like to see some changes in the 7025 or the SOP, really, so that maybe controls could be put in place to allow for credit cards or debit cards or maybe electronic funds transfer. So in the 9th Western, Commodore Sonny Thatch and Chief of Staff Tim Derry are working with the people in Sector Lake Michigan to find out how they can backfill some of the shortfalls that may be experienced due to the new staffing arrangements that the Coast Guard's putting in place with forward operating locations and scheduled mission stations. And that's going quite well for them. They're going to stand up a team of, they're going to set a schedule of auxiliary patrols with the sector to help fill those gaps. They're also in an effort of, they're kind of redistricting their area to ensure that flotillas and divisions are going to be able to cover those gaps. They'll be supporting the 100th Grand Haven Coast Guard Festival this year, and also helping with the Republican and Democrat national conventions that'll be held in the area. Recruiting remains a challenge with them. They would like to see maybe an updated, freshened up recruiting message and some tools. And it sounds like Todd Monis's people are already working on that. So that's a good thing. And they've stood up a legal assistance team, and they're to help with the sectors and the district, the legal offices. They need to find a way that this active duty and the auxiliary can communicate to track requests and assignment there, but that workaround's being worked on. The 8th Eastern Region, Commodore Chris Whitaker and Ron Bonneau. 8th Eastern had a 8.1 net increase in membership last year. I think that led the nation. Congratulations to them. They kind of attribute that to a new program that was stood up called Catch and Keep. And I'm sure if any of you are interested in that, if you reached out to Commodore Whitaker or Ron Bonneau, they would be happy to share the details with you. Their RBS efforts are up. They saw a 111% increase last year in program visits. And they're very excited about the fact that they've started the new year with a full complement of district staff officers that are very excited to move the program forward. Having some challenges with recruiting in rural areas that are being addressed, and they're trying to build their leadership bench strength, if you will, to help with succession into leadership areas by continuing with their leadership development and training classes at their D trains. The 8th Coastal, Pete Scabardo and Donna Day, had a 1.2% net increase in membership last year. Glad to see that. A lot of boat crew training and other training is going on, and just concluded their fall or their winter conference last week, and made sure that all the required training that is needed this year was offered at that conference, which was a big draw for a lot of members to come in. They're bearing fruit from their in-person flotilla commander academies that have been held in 2022 and 23. There's more people are stepping up into elected and appointed positions. Continue to try to knock down the Oxdata challenge wall that is existing, and it seems to be working with continued training there. The 8th Western Rivers, Commodore Brock Stevens and Chief Staff Bob Arisman continue to enjoy an excellent relationship with the active duty at the sectors they serve. They're sponsoring a call in an area assistant program at their upcoming conference, which will be held on the Cutter Cheyenne, which will give the candidates the opportunity to get some real time in a real galley with active duty culinary specialists. And they're sponsoring a SAR competition this summer, second weekend in June in Table Rock, Missouri. They've laid out a challenge to the 8th Coastal and the 8th Eastern regions to send crews, and I'm hoping that the 3 Commodores make it a little interesting with a little side bet, so we'll see what happens there. Membership continues to be a challenge, but they're very happy with the new members that are coming into the program because they seem to be very interested, a bit younger, and full of energy, and it's hoped that that will attract other members to the Coast Guard Auxiliary. Pretty much heard all the good stuff that's going on in operations and prevention, so I really don't want to go there. But I do want to reach out to Rick Saunders and to Anthony Marzano and thank them for their leadership and dedication and for the efforts that they put in managing the staff, coordinating the projects that the directorates are working on. I want to thank Rick and Anthony too for their counsel and advice, as well as their patience and tolerance of me. We all know that a lot of new handbooks and PQSs have come out and surfaced. And I want to shout out to Master Chief Parks, thank him for reviewing all of that, getting it updated so we're good for a few years going into the future, and for the common sense approach that he takes and his willingness to listen when we kind of have an issue or a disagreement that we can kind of work out. So Master Chief, thank you very much for that. Lastly, I want to ask all of you to continue to follow up on the progress of the gap analysis within your districts. We really need that information. I know it's changed a little bit since the new staffing policies come out with the Coast Guard, but it's supposed to be a dynamic thing. So let's keep it dynamic. And with that, thank you for your time and attention, and thank you for all you do, and look forward to seeing all of you in Orlando in August. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Commodore Ferry. We will now hear from DNACO Pacific Area and Recreational Boating Safety, Tiny Singler.
Thank you, Kelly. It is my honor, privilege, and pleasure to be here to represent the PAC area and, of course, the recreational boating safety. I thank National Commodore almost every day since a year and something ago that he actually assigned me to the RBS. But to talk about our PAC area, what an area we cover. You have DLM North, which is headed up by Commodore Hahn and his Chief of Staff, Jim Losey, which covers Northern California, Nevada, and Utah. And then DLM South, which is headed up by Commodore Mosos and his Chief of Staff, Rob Donahue, which covers Southern California, Nevada, Utah, and Arizona. And D13, which covers, is headed up by Commodore Keenley and his Chief of Staff, Craig Hartman. And that's Oregon, Washington, and Idaho and Montana. And D14, which is headed up by Commodore Stewart and his Chief of Staff, Jody Nelson, and that covers Hawaii, Guam, Samoa, and Singapore. And D17, which is headed up by Commodore Parrish and his Chief of Staff, David Larkin, which covers Alaska, and Alaska's most probably as big as a couple, 2 or 3 states in there, and even countries. So within that, what the highlights, which are fantastic, when we consider what coming out of COVID, everything else, I think 23 really brought us into action. So what we have, DLM North, they augmented their RFF, as they call it, or if we help wanted, over 15,000 hours. But what's really great is they augmented both the Coast Guard and their missions, which accounted for 124,610 volunteer hours. Included in that, they managed to do close to 2,600 VEs, close to 2,900 program visits, and they taught 6,763 students. DLM South, they augmented from the RFF, or the help wanted, over 13,000 hours to the Coast Guard. Included, they had vessel exams close to 2,600, program visits close to 2,800, member training 1,309 hours, and students they had 815. They had over 3,000 hours of culinary assistance, and they had a net increase in membership. Now, both DLM North and South and most of the PAC area all had a net increase. And in DLM South, what this ended up being is the first time in 5 years that they had a net positive. So that's taken absolute correct direction. D13, headed up by Commodore Keenley and, of course, Craig Hartman, they completed 86% of their operational goal for VEs, 84% of their operational goal for PVs, and 150% of their paddlecraft. They actually took the paddlecraft VSCs and set up, and so they came out with 150%. They had the #1 program visitor in the auxiliary, who was Tom Murphy, and they had a net increase in membership also. And that's the first in quite a while there too. D14, okay. They made it through 2 horrible catastrophes, all right. One was the Hurricane fire, and of course the other one was the typhoon that hit Guam. And you know, that just shows pure vigilance and devotion to duty. I keep going. They held their elected officers training. They requested their request for forces or the RFF or help wanted. They have got a launch going on with the program. and it's in its initial stages. They had a net increase in membership once again. And their missions, culinary assistance, 389 hours. RBS was 478. Member training, 26,928 hours of time spent. They did 32 boat missions to assist the air station, and they had 103 ox patrols. D17, the state-supported Kids Don't Float program has become so large there, and Marion and his crew and has been out there in so many different areas of Alaska, remote areas. And, he mentioned that, even though these people grew up around the water, on the water and stuff, they know very little about boating safety or anything concerning how to protect themselves. So this is a very, very well placed program to be there. They held their elected officer training, and they're working on starting ox air missions. What's really crazy, the culinary systems, they had 5,175 hours. Vessel exams, 300. Program visits, 459. Public education, they had 1,597, almost 1,600 grads. And of course, 725 hours to PA. What this is showing here is that these programs and these districts, rather, are getting into their programs. I know that you heard from the RBS group just earlier today, but I do want to bring up a few real quick things, okay? These are accomplishments, just real quick to put them back in there. The B Directorate, they did an SLO Academy, as they told you, and they received a grant for $105,000. We're currently working on extending that grant for the coming year, and we're working on 2 other grants too. So they've got it together on how to put them together. What we have to do now is to get them submitted. They produced the Oxpad Handbook. They also, too, have already this year held a WAT, which is the winter Oxpad training, which was highly successful. And this is part and due because that we were able to receive traveling funds. And hopefully, my big thing is about paddlecraft and getting our word out there. And our directorates have picked up on it and taken hold on it. I do want to bring up the E-Directorate of doing 2 actual courses and get them rewritten and submitted to NASPA in 1 year, which was Boat America and BS&S. And they are in their final stages of approval right now. Also too, the V Director, I can't say enough between everything that they did to try to support our vessel examiners and program visitors out there and get the word out. Working on a TV handbook right now. That's getting in the final stages. Also brought up several important items, and we've added it to the 7012, which is about the Marine Mobile Service Identity, so that boaters out there will know how to and why they should get their radios, set up and where the identity could be known. They also now we're going to have a way of being able to tell why the turn downs for our vessel exams, which means it's going to help our public education side in the future too, because we'll know where we're lacking in areas. Once again, it's my total privilege to have been in this position, and I love it and love everything you do, and what a great group, and thank you very much. Back to you, Kelly.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. We will now hear from DNACO Information Technology and Planning, Linda Merriman.
Thank you, Kelly. Good day, everyone. I'm happy to have this opportunity to share with you some of the things that are happening in information technology and planning's 4 directorates. On the information technology side, under Assistant National Commodore Susan Davies, the User Support and Services Directorate is led by Director Jen Austin and Deputy Bill Ballard. They plan 1 in-person and 3 virtual information services officer, those are OX 10 C-School classes for this year. The OX 10 team will conduct several new information services officer introduction meetings to build interest in the training. They are also preparing several short videos that will be offered through the Moodle classroom. The first 2 will be quick guides on how to report and enter culinary and chaplain assistance missions. A third will cover administrative activity mission codes. Districts are encouraged to have their IS officers participate in the OX 10 courses, whether in person, virtually, or locally through their districts. Last year, the course was expanded to 3.5 days to provide adequate time to cover all the material. After making that change, the passing rate improved to above 80%. A critical service provided to members, the Coast Guard, and the public by the IT group is the help desks. In Q4, the help desk team processed 551 tickets, about the same as in Q3. Although no direct correlation is evident yet, the improved visibility of knowledge-based articles in the new help desk system is likely working to keep the number of tickets low. The OX Data Tier 1 support team processed 650 service requests in Q4 after exceeding 800 per quarter for the prior 7 quarters. This is a significant improvement, much of which is attributed to the implementation of a delay in sending OX Data login information to new members until 45 days after their enrollment. It is likely why the total number of password and login request tickets dropped to about 350 in Q4 versus over 500 in the preceding quarters. The other half of IT is the Computer Software and Systems Directorate, led by Director Amanda Constant and Deputies Carlos Arenas, who heads Software Development, Operations, and Program Management, and Joe Espino, who handles internal and external cybersecurity initiatives. Their project to automate the work of moving test results into OX Data continues to progress as planned. Basic qualification course test results are now being pulled directly from the Moodle system into OX Data, eliminating the need for members to take the BQC2 tests in the separate National Testing Center system. The Websites Without Webmasters, WOW application was successfully migrated to a separate server. That was followed by adding the WOW member zone to the Cognito authentication system. Both actions enhance the security of this legacy product. An initial requirements gathering session was held to investigate upgrading the auxiliary website infrastructure. Additional requirements discussions are scheduled. The results gathered will drive the long-term WOW replacement strategy. A review of no longer used commercial-based unit websites identified multiple instances of outdated or incorrect information, inappropriate content, and broken links. The Directorate is developing a process to continually identify and deprecate such defunct websites. On the cybersecurity side of the Directorate, the auxiliary cyber team has been integrated into the Coast Guard Cyber Task Force. This gives them access to reporting on vulnerabilities and cyber threat intelligence information, enabling a more proactive defense of auxiliary websites and information systems. The annual update to the Auxiliary Cybersecurity Awareness Briefing material was published on the Auxiliary National website for National Cybersecurity Awareness Month in October. It included the release of a Safeguard Identity Protection Toolkit for members' use to help them actively apply security measures in their personal and auxiliary activities. At the request of BSX and Coast Guard ForceCom, a vulnerability scan of the auxiliary online classroom Moodle system was completed with no significant issues identified. Several auxiliary unit websites did have vulnerability issues identified during a service-wide evaluation led by the Department of Defense. The Auxiliary Cybersecurity Division is providing mitigation guidance to the affected units. And one of several augmentation activities completed by the Cyber Division was support to Sector New York's Operation Shut-Eye cyber tabletop exercise. On the performance and student programs side, under Assistant National Commodore Peter Jensen, the Student Programs Directorate is led by Director Jean McNamara and Deputy Jacob Thayer. They started an outreach effort to determine ways to support Coast Guard Junior ROTC units. Initial activity included contact with JROTC groups in North Carolina and Miami, Florida. Team members participated in the Coast Guard's Talent Management Transformation Task Force Focus Group on Sea Scout and young adult recruiting. They produced a final report with specific recommendations on ways to enhance the growth and retention of young adults in the auxiliary. The Auxiliary University Program, AUP, grew from 266 to 289 students across 48 institutions. Elizabeth City State University is the newest brick and mortar unit. It marks the second AUP unit in a historically Black university. In Q4, 5 AUP students became Coast Guard ensigns through the Direct Commission Officer Program. That program's selection panel chose 13 additional AUP students as primary selectees for Officer Candidate School this April, and another 14 as alternates. The Aux Scout program grew from 615 to 668 members in 34 auxiliary-sponsored ships. The Coast Guard selected 4 auxiliary Sea Scouts for the Coast Guard Cutter Eagle summer cruise and 3 for this summer's Academy introduction mission. Youth Program's monthly Coast Guard Tech Talks online workshops continue to receive an enthusiastic response from Sea Scouts and auxiliary flotillas. Recent topics were NOAA map making and Beyond Maps, the Evolving Earth Sciences. The workshops were recorded and are available on demand from the Aux Scout YouTube channel. 290 auxiliary admissions partners are working with the Coast Guard Academy. An additional 50 selectees from currently underrepresented areas of the country are in the process of being trained. Virtual training sessions were conducted for Academy admissions partners on interviewing techniques for Coast Guard Academy applicants and high school outreach programs. The sessions were recorded and are available online. Finally, the Performance Measurement Directorate is led by Director Kevin Redden and Deputy Harry Parsons. They produced and posted all regularly scheduled reports as planned. These reports are accessible after login on the M Directorate webpage. The Strategic Plan Tracking Team continued monitoring organization-wide progress on the 2022 to 2028 National Strategic Plan. The plan was refreshed on 1 November to expand the member-led affinity groups initiative to encompass NACO's inclusion advisory group objectives. Doing that increased the total number of milestones from 110 to 119. Of those, 77, which is 65%, are reported complete. The new member and member exit surveys continue to be conducted as scheduled, with the most recent reports distributed in December. The response rate for those surveys is holding steady at just over 20%. A trend report of the past 4 years' results for both was developed and published in November. This will expand to become a 5-year trend report, which will be available annually before NACON. These are just a few highlights of what's happening in information technology and planning. Thank you for the time. I appreciate the opportunity to brief you.
Thank you so much, Commodore Merriman. Up next, we will hear from President of National Association of Commodores, Bob Schaefer.
Thank you, Kelly, and greetings, Commodores and shipmates. Excuse me. Because we did not hold our usual meeting at NACON, we had a virtual meeting in October, at which time the following members were elected for the next term. I was elected as president, Commodore Clark Godshall as vice president. Commodore Bob Lauer is our treasurer, as well as our immediate past president. Commodore Carolyn Belmore, secretary, and Commodore Pete Jensen was appointed our registrar. And I'm honored to be part of such an excellent team. Our continuing mission is to leverage the expertise of our members to assist the National Commodore and the National Board of the U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary in advancing the programs of the Auxiliary. We provide a forum for active dialogue with our elected leaders, and we've extended an invitation to membership to all newly elected or appointed Commodores. And given that this is a virtual gathering instead of physical gathering, you'll have to imagine me twisting your arms. The NAC also maintains a memorial monument dedicated to honoring auxiliary Commodores who passed over the bar. These were exemplary leaders who devoted countless hours to making the auxiliary the world's most prominent volunteer Marine organization. The memorial monument is comprised of 2 large marble stones and is inscribed with the names of all national Commodores who have passed and all other Commodores who have passed since 2005. The next phase of this project will be transporting it and installing it in a place of honor at the U.S. Coast Guard Training Center at Cape May, New Jersey. We have all of the appropriate approvals and are now seeking funding for this relocation project and to complete the engraving of over 20 more names. Donations can be made through the Auxiliary Association by using the donate portal on the Association's website, and I urge you to give generously to this very worthwhile project. Excuse me. In the coming days, I'll be privileged to join the DNACOs as we participate in the selection of the National Flotilla of the Year. And I'm looking forward to representing our Commodores as we recognize this most exemplary flotilla in the nation. So thank you for your attention, and thank you to all Commodores for your devotion to duty as a senior leader in the United States Coast Guard Auxiliary.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you, Captain and Commodores, for your updates. And we are going to take a quick 15-minute break. So if you will be back online at 14:45 Eastern Standard Time.
Good afternoon, welcome back. I will now reconvene the meeting of the Committee of the Whole. According to the agenda, this is where I offer my remarks. And what I'd like to do is just give you a briefing on the state of the auxiliary. I'd like to start out back in last August, NACON in Florida. Unfortunately, it was a great event that we had to cut short. Who would ever thought that COVID, our forever seems like nemesis, would rear its ugly head again, but yet it did. We had 18 members report and confirm positive, and one of which was very seriously ill. So if we had 18, I have to believe that there were probably 25 to 30 members who did contract it, because we know many don't report. And unfortunately, it made us cut our event short, but we'll always err on the side of caution, especially when it comes to the safety of our members. We're looking very much forward to this being an in-person event to take place in St. Louis, but never in my wildest dreams would I think that we would get to the beginning of March and not have a federal budget in place. Never wanting to gamble with tens of thousands of dollars in dues money from our members, the decision was made to have this a virtual event. Like so many others, I wish it could be in person. I am going to look forward to NACON being in person, and hopefully in years to come, we'll have a budget in place long before March of each year. That being said, I'd like to speak about the realignment and reorganization that's going on currently with active duty Coast Guard to address the workforce shortages. As we all know, there's going to be a number of small boat stations closing. I see this as an opportunity for us to do much more to support the Coast Guard. In each of these areas where there's a small boat station closing, I encourage each of you to increase your presence, up your patrols, make our active duty counterparts know that we're there for them, we're there to help. Let the public know that the Coast Guard still exists in each of these areas. I think it's a great opportunity, and I'm confident that we'll take advantage of it. I'm also very proud about the new training, boat crew training manual and boat crew qualification manual. This provides a standardization for us that is very much needed. So if a member gets a check ride in San Francisco, that same check ride is being given in Palm Bay, Florida, no different. The same training, the same exercises are done everywhere in the same manner. This is something that's been a long time coming, and I'm very happy and encouraged to see it here. In a recent conversation with Vice Commandant Poulin, Admiral Poulin asked me to just remind each of our members that the Coast Guard Museum is under construction in New London, Connecticut, and will feature many auxiliary exhibits. My next item to share with you is something I consider a two-pronged, absolutely great news. The first is YM1 Tober has received an extension and will be with us for another year. I can't tell you how thrilled I am to share that with you. But what I'm even more thrilled to share with you is sometime in late spring, early summer, YN1 Tober will be advanced to Yeoman Chief Tober. So Yeoman Chief Select, congratulations. We're all here for you. We appreciate you. As many of you know, one of my visions was to make us a more inclusive organization. Is the middle word in my watchwords. To that end, we formed a group known as NIAG, NACO's Inclusion Advisory Group. And The group has made great strides in making that vision possible, making us a more inclusive organization. You're going to hear a lot more about that from Commodore Kathy Slaybaugh before the weekend's over. But what I do want to encourage you to do is to seek out my policy on diversity and my policy on anti-discrimination and anti-harassment, both of which can be found on the national website leadership page. Working with BSX, Reverend Poole, Father Mode, we have managed to make arrangements to have a number of rabbis get underway and provide ministry and services for the upcoming Passover holiday. And they'll be cutter bound, and this is something that I think is excellent. I'm pretty much very excited about this. As you heard Director Lee Zimmerman mention earlier, we now are about to launch a digital interactive uniform guide. This too was a vision of mine. As many people are aware, it's very difficult to change anything in the auxiliary manual. And although it can be done, it's quite an undertaking. So to be able to remove chapters 10 and 11 and make them a guide or a handbook facilitates that. And uniform changes, as we're all aware, come fairly quickly. Perfect example is the winter dress blue uniform I'm currently wearing. It's recently been approved for year-round wear. So to indicate that in the Auxman would be somewhat of an undertaking. However, with this new digital interactive guide, it can be updated in a matter of minutes. So I'm pretty excited about that. Next, I'd like to speak to you and encourage each member, every member. If something isn't quite right, if you're not happy with something, if something isn't as you expected, please work within your chain of leadership and management. Keep it in the chain. All too often, an aggrieved member feels the best way to handle this is to write a congressman, write the commandant, and in a couple of instances, write the president of the United States. All that serves to do is to take our already overtaxed BSX staff, make them stop everything they're doing to address this, and that further delays all necessary work that they should be doing for us. Your chain of leadership and management is capable of dealing with whatever it is that you feel needs to be addressed. So I encourage you, make use of that. In the past couple of years, you've heard your auxiliary senior leadership, you've heard active duty senior leaders speak very highly of a lot of our new programs, cyber, clergy, interpreters, culinary, medical, providing new and very innovative ways to support the Coast Guard. And while each of these programs are very, very important, please don't forget or think for 1 minute that our legacy missions are less important. They're equally as important. Every Marine dealer visitor, every member training officer, every vessel examiner, every aviator, every surface craft operator, every public affairs publications officer are performing an equally important function. They're laying the foundation for our organization. So, to that end, we've created something known as Operation Spotlight, and one program at a time will be highlighted periodically, and there will be articles, photographs, and interviews of each of these programs, just to let our membership know that every member's contribution is valued. Every member's contribution matters. And I have saved something for last, and this is difficult, but we're not ones to shy away from difficult things. I'm sure each of you have seen the CNN reports regarding Operation Fouled Anchor. And while that may be what it is, I need you to know from me that the Coast Guard is taking a very proactive approach to this. VNACO, Kirkwood, and I spent a week in Washington addressing and learning about the Accountability Transparency Review, and most importantly, about strengthening our service culture. The Coast Guard has employed a company known as NTRAIN to help change this culture and strengthen our culture so that we are a different service. While it is true that the sexual assaults that did occurred within active duty, and I am grateful we have not had to address any of that within the auxiliary, we still have a significant number of sexual harassment allegations, as well as hazing and bullying. And in my eyes, even one is too many. So I'm going to ask each of you to live up to your core values and keep your respect for one another. Remember, none of us have to do this. We choose to do this. We volunteer to do this. I wake up every morning and I remind myself that I lead volunteers. I thank you for doing what you're doing. And I ask you, above all, remain true to your core values. Honor each other, respect each other. It's so important. I thank you for your kind attention. So, moving on, we will now address the recommendations that have been submitted. You've received 4 recommendations to be acted upon by the National Board on tomorrow. And VNACO Kirkwood, would you please read the recommendations?
I'm happy to, thank you. Each member of the National Board received a copy of these recommendations on February 1st. These recommendations were also reviewed at the 3 recent area meetings. I'll now present an overview of each of the recommendations. The first recommendation was submitted by Commodore Tracy Schultz, a NACO for Diversity and Inclusion, and would amend the auxiliary manual to make all A's within the insignia of office, exclusive of Commodore shoulder boards and aguillettes, one standard color, blue. Is there any further discussion?
Yes, I'd like to add something.
Okay.
I'm trying to get my camera to come back on, so be patient. Here it is. This is nothing new. This has existed for quite some time on our ODUs. There's only one color A on our ODUs. They're all blue, regardless of whether you're an appointed or an elected officer. So this is merely an extension of that. Commodore shoulder boards haven't had A's for as long as I can remember. So this is just one more logical step toward our becoming an inclusive organization. Thank you.
Comment?
Go ahead.
Commodore, thank you. This is Commodore John Holmes, D7. We had a fun chat about this at the Atlantic East meeting, and I did a little groundwork to see how my members felt about it. And initially, I felt that having the indication of being in an elected position was some type of a token of a pride, so to speak. And I initially felt opposition. I was opposed to this change, but in having discussed this with several people, I must say I was a little surprised to find out I was wrong, that several of them reacted, well, honestly, we don't see it as as something we give a lot of thought to. So, you know, based on my conversation with some of my elected division commanders and flotilla commanders, I kind of changed my mind on this thing. I felt at first that it had some value in terms of recognition because it is a slightly different path. The only thing I thought was we were looking at a silver A versus any color. And that was maybe that's just a suggestion rather than have a color at all. But again, there's a cost to everything we do. So I just wanted to share those comments. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Commodore Holmes. I think that's one of the challenges is the cost included in this. If this recommendation is approved tomorrow, then we would just stop purchasing red A's and phase them out. So as we run out, people would get the blue A's instead of the red A's. But switch everything over to a silver A would be probably very cost prohibitive at this point.
would
But
be.
appreciate that.
Commodore, also, one other thing is that BSX supports this recommendation. However, they're looking for a sunset date. So we would have to make an amendment tomorrow to add a sunset date to it. I'd like to get that discussed today, whatever the board feels is appropriate for a sunset date. But I believe it was Commodore West, in conversation with me, brought up something that I had considered. Attrition itself is going to sunset a lot of this.
Mhm.
The first thing we would do is we've already advised both the exchange and Auxen that there's a possibility that this is going to happen, and to not reorder, not restock. So that'd be less items that they have to stock. So when they run out, they'll just replace with the one color egg, just like we did when we changed to the ODUs. And somebody pointed out to me is that the metal devices don't wear out. And I'm going to date myself here, but they said that a skilled grandchild with Tester's blue model paint could take care of that red A in a matter of seconds.
There you go. There you go.
So I'm guessing my hands are not steady enough to do this.
Well, thank you both for the opportunity to comment and to share the feedback that I got from my team. Thank you.
Always, brother, always.
Thank you for actually asking your staff about that. I think that that shows great leadership. Thank you. It is sometimes the more we hear from other people, the more our opinions change as well. So appreciate that very much. Any further discussion?
Ryan's got his hand up.
Commodore Parrish from D17. Just a thought, there was some speculation there about a sunset date. Just to throw it out for discussion, I would say 2 years, sunset at 31 December 26.
All right, that's definitely is a possibility. Gus, comment on that?
I think the initial suggestion from BSX, and if Steve Minatola's on, if I'm wrong, I hope he corrects me. I thought it would be 31 December of 27. But if we feel more comfortable with 26, I would never oppose that. Steve?
Yeah, Commodore. I don't recall saying a specific date, but just a period of time to allow, particularly, and this is me just thinking, are allowing auxiliaries who have been purely appointed staff officers and wearing red insignia a time to get some mileage out of it before they're expected to transition to something else. That was it.
Thank you for correcting me.
Okay, great. Thank you. Any further comments? All right, let's move on. The second recommendation was submitted by our National Commodore and would create a cybersecurity directorate, the Y Directorate, under the supervision of the National Commodore through its director, who should report to the Assistant National Commodore for Information Technology. Given the current makeup of the C Directorate, the reorganization that would follow would create, following the creation of the Y Directorate, would result in a net gain of only one office, the Director of Y. Again, any discussion on this?
Hey, Commodore, this is Kurt Surek in 5NR. Why I'm for this, I think it makes sense to have this. The only thing that I'm concerned about is we keep on growing wider and wider. And at some point in time, is there going to be some thoughts to maybe having committees or somebody look at the whole structure to kind of reorganize? So I'm trying to cut out positions at my district because we are just coming so wide, it becomes inefficient and it becomes quite burdensome. We just keep on putting layers and layers upon it. But that's just my opinion in talking to folks. So I'll leave that kind of at that note.
Commodore, I'd love to address that. 2 years ago, Commodore Malewski, NACO at the time, impaneled a committee, also headed by Commodore Slaybaugh, and I expect a report very shortly. At the end of the recommendations that I believe will be forthcoming, we will probably end up down one directorate by adding this one. We are not looking to grow the national staff. We are looking to reorganize the national staff. And I believe when the dust settles, we will have one less directorate than we currently do. And as you're very much aware, this is a span of control consideration as this group, these divisions grow. So it's time to split them into two divisions under one directorate. But yes, we are taking a very careful look at the national staff. There is a number of people on this committee. They've been working on it for quite some time. I personally gave Commodore Slaybaugh some extra time for her final report because she was moving from, I believe, Toledo, Ohio to New York. And as we all know who have undertaken an out-of-state move, it kind of disrupts your life for a while. So I gave her permission to take a little extra time with that.
Very well. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Commodore Sarek. Any other discussion? All right, let's move on. The third recommendation was submitted by the T Directorate as part of the onboarding task force that I spoke of earlier. This recommendation is to no longer use the new member examination as a requirement to enroll in the Coast Guard Auxiliary. In its place, we would continue to require the completion of the updated BCQ2 course as we do now. This change would take place effective 31 March 2024 or as soon thereafter as possible. Is there any further discussion? All right, hearing none, we'll move on to the last one. The fourth and last recommendation was also submitted by the T Directorate as part of the ongoing onboarding task force. This recommendation is to remove the BCQ2 course, the basic qualification course, and the administrative procedures course as courses required for eligibility to run for elected office. In their place, we would add successful completion of the Auxiliary Leadership and Management School, AUXLAMS, or the Auxiliary Flotilla Leadership course as requirements. This change would be effective 31 December 2024 or as soon thereafter as possible. Is there any further discussion on this recommendation? All right, thank you. This concludes the review of the recommendations.
I believe we had a hand raised on that one. Commodore Kirkwood.
Okay, who rose the hand?
I'm sorry, Commodore Kirkwood. This is Marion Parrish from D17. Just a clarification. I heard and I read we would set aside the BQC2 and the auxiliary course, the
administrative procedures,
right? The administrative procedures course. But in order to run for office or to be accepted into office, it's my understanding you have to be BQ. You have to have the BQC2 in order to be BQ. So why would we remove that?
Let me answer that two ways. Number one, not everybody needs to have the BCQ2, right? People before February 18th of 20, whatever that date is, February of 20, I think it was 20, whatever, 18, did not need to have that to run for elected office. It's only those people afterwards in order to become BQ. So you do have to be BQ in order to run for elected office. The other thought on this, as we discussed it in our task force, was that the BCQ2 course is really an introductory course and should not be considered a leadership course. Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
Commodore, I have a couple of comments on this as well. The T director is correct in the APC course is not a leadership course. However, I believe it's called for the test taker to familiarize themselves with the auxiliary manual, which of course, as elected leaders, we have to do on a continuing basis. I believe it should still be should continue as a requirement for elected leaders.
Which course was that, the APC?
The APC, yes.
Okay. Yeah, good comment. Thank you. So that recommendation could be amended tomorrow when we're before the board?
Exactly, yes.
Good.
Commodore Kirkwood, this is Curtis Hahn.
Okay.
So echoing Commodore Thatch, basically APC alone not be an eligible requirement for for running office, but part of a requirement to run for office, they should have APC. I think that's what he's pointing.
So your consideration is that the APC alone should not qualify one to run for elected office, but with another course, it would be okay.
It should be a requirement, yeah, because every leader should know the auxiliary, basically the aux manual.
It was a great course, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Commodore?
Yeah.
Circle back to the A, and I just thought about this sitting here. You know, one of the things we're not addressing in this change is people that may have shoulder boards with the red A that no longer hold that office. And if we sunset the shoulder boards altogether, you know, someone could have a shoulder board with an A on it from a staff office they held 10, 15 years ago, they no longer hold.
Or they still hold.
Or they still hold. But I'm just thinking about, before we make an amendment and we commit ourselves to something tomorrow, maybe we should give some consideration to that, as opposed to, you know, maybe saying people in current staff offices, you know, who have the red A, maybe have until 2027, 2028, to Mr. Minatola's point, some point in time to sunset it, and that effective with such and such a date, all new officers must have the blue A, or will have the blue A.
So again, this is not for this recommendation. It's for the second recommendation I believe we had.
Yes.
You can certainly make that amendment tomorrow.
Okay. I just think that needs to be considered before we commit future leaders to something that might not turn out as well as we think it's going to be. Thank you.
Pat, was this in regards to the red A's?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I thought we would do a sunset date on that. Did I misunderstand?
No, Commodore, my point's this. If we sunset it 3 years from now, how many people do we have running around with that red A on that no longer hold that office? But by virtue of the fact that they did hold that staff office at one time, they get to wear those boards with that red A. Are we going to be forcing them, if we sunset it, to purchase new shoulder boards? And, you know, kind of goes to member satisfaction. Just something to consider.
Something to consider. Thank you. All right. Now that concludes the recommendations. Thank you.
John Hume has his hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes, thank you, Commodore Kirkwood. I'm certainly in favor of using aux-lams as one of the requirements for leadership, or something like aux-lams. However, I'm a little hesitant in that sometimes that course and other leadership courses, particularly C-school type courses, are sometimes difficult to access because of things like instructor issues, personnel issues, or funding issues. And what I don't want is our good intentions to create a barrier to entry to leadership. I don't want to oppose this. However, I also don't want I don't want to create the unintended consequences of having somebody not be able to become a leader because they weren't able to access this course.
Yeah, thank you for that, Commodore Hume. It has been discussed amongst the group in the beginning when we talked about this in NextCom, and so that certainly is one of the considerations. Definitely, yeah. I see that Farron Petties from training has your Commodore Petties. Do you want to talk?
Sure. Thank you, Commodore. I just wanted to point out that it's not saying that OXLAMS is the only leadership course. The AFLC course, which we can offer live or virtual, rolls every single month. It is 100% accessible. We're building up that cadre so that each district can have a dedicated on-the-ground instructing core, as well as the online option for members to take to help fulfill that commitment. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you for that comment. That clears things up a little bit. That does give us some availability, some options, because that course is available, should be available to anybody, and not limited to numbers or C-schools. So thank you for that. All right. I can't see everybody. Does anybody else have a hand up?
Not that I see.
Okay. Now are we done with discussing the recommendations?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right. Thank you, Commodore Kirkwood. We are now going to view a video from Julie Carey on the Women in Leadership Initiative.
Good afternoon and happy Women's History Month. I am Julie Carey, Chair of the Auxiliary Chapter of the U.S. Coast Guard Women's Leadership Initiative. We are starting our 4th year, having been chartered by the USCG WLI in February of 2021 to help develop women leaders in the auxiliary and provide networking and mentorship opportunities. Because many of you have heard me speak on this before, I'm going to skip a lot of the basic information about affinity groups and what we do and focus on primarily providing updates. The first of these updates is the updated vision statement. The updated vision statement reads, a Coast Guard where women are equally represented and inherently valued for their expertise, experience, and contributions. The USCG WLI Governance Committee released this a couple of months ago to reflect the desire for our women not to be subjected to tokenism and appointed and promoted purely because they are women, but because as women, we bring differing experiences, expertise, and contributions to the table. There are currently 38 WLI chapters across the country. We've been exploring the best way to expand the auxiliary chapter's presence in our districts and discussing the issue with WLI leadership. It was determined that rather than create multiple auxiliary chapters, it would be better for the Coast Guard to incorporate our auxiliaries into the local units chapter where available. If you have a member who would like to get involved in any of these locations, please let me know and I can facilitate exchanging that contact information. The auxiliary chapter's leadership team is also working on the potential for districts to host local unit chapters at their DTRAINs. One of the common questions that we get is, how does WLI fit into the auxiliary's organizational structure? The short answer is that it doesn't. Affinity groups work for the members outside of the chain of command or chain of leadership. We are separate organizations made up of members of the Coast Guard who are partnering with leadership to improve the organization. One of the bigger policy items that the WLI has been involved in this year is advising leadership and providing resources to members who may have been impacted by sexual assault and harassment identified in the Operation Fouled Anchor report. As part of this response, the Commandant commissioned an accountability and transparency report, the result of which was a memorandum identifying 33 directed actions within 6 lines of effort. These lines of effort included additional training and professional development to address culture issues, incorporating core values through communication, training, and evaluations, implementing of core policies to ensure accountability for harmful behaviors, and improve transparency and access to workforce data and resources. The USCG WLI was requested to develop a response to this memorandum. Each WLI chapter was welcome to submit comments and concerns, and while this report and associated directed actions were aimed at active duty personnel, the auxiliary chapter discussed ways each of these directed actions could be applied to the auxiliary to improve issues of harassment and discrimination we have within our organization. While it is impossible to summarize a 3-page memorandum in one slide, I did want to provide an example of some of the proposals contained within our response. Under the action to develop more effective leadership courses, we suggested that there be additional in-person training sessions on special topics such as bystander intervention and sexual assault and prevention and response training that could be delivered at DTRAIN, NACON, and NTRAIN. Admiral Fagan also directed integration of core values into the enlisted professional military education performance qualification. This is something that we currently do not have a parallel to in the auxiliary. However, given that 40% of our current district chiefs of staff and district commodores have not completed the level 1 leadership competency, and only 38% have completed level 4, we feel that many issues stem from a lack of a good foundational leadership education. We recommended that election criteria be based more on merit through the development of an auxiliary education performance qualification. And finally, under addressing improper conduct, we are suggesting increased transparency through an anonymized report on the outcome investigations to increase confidence that concerns and complaints are in fact being taken seriously. We also recommended that in light of our leadership being selected by popular vote, that the best place for civil rights investigations is not within a member's chain of leadership, but rather taken outside the district where politics will not play a role. Some future activities that you want to be aware of include a climate survey. This is the beginning of one of the actions recommended in the auxiliary chapter's ATR response. In the coming weeks, the survey will be emailed out to members identified as female in Aux data. We would appreciate your encouragement to your members to fill this out honestly, as it will help WLI and national leadership make progress in determining where our issues lie. We are also looking at opportunities to increase networking amongst our members. We're looking at hosting book groups, the first of which will likely be Brene Brown's Dare to Lead. We're in the process of determining a format, designing registration, and submitting an application for funding from the USCGWLI to purchase books. Women who are interested should sign up for the mailing list when they complete their climate survey. If you wish to reach either the chair of the USCGWLI or myself, here are our email addresses. I am also, of course, an Aux officer. I thank you for your time, and I look forward to working with you all in the future.
Thank you, Julie. We appreciate that. At this time, I would like to ask if there's any further business to be brought before this board. Hearing none. Ms. Crecilius, are there any announcements?
Yes, just one. Reminder that we are going to begin tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time for the National Board meeting. Thank you all for joining us today.
I will now adjourn the meeting of the Committee of the Whole at 15:24 hours Eastern Time. Thank you all for your kind attention.